So, is this what you thought it would be?
Thought what would be? Where am I? Is this heaven?
No, it isn't heaven.
Is it hell?
No, it isn't hell either. Actually, there is no hell. Although I hear Los Angeles is getting pretty close.
Where are we?
You're in the middle. Between the two. Real. Right now you're in a kind of limbo. You're neither here nor there.
Where are we?
Between light and shadow.
Hello, Hepcats and Dingbats. Welcome yet again to Between Light and Shadow, the podcast that straddles that precarious line between life and death in our never-ceasing quest to plumb the hazy depths of the greatest TV show ever, The Twilight Zone. We've just crossed over into a new year, 2017, which is a perfect time to reflect, ruminate, refocus, and recommit ourselves to whatever it is that each of us is committed to. Because it's all too easy to lose sight of things. The things that matter. The people we care about. The talents that distinguish us. All the things that make life worth the trouble. Tonight, we examine the curious case of a man who has done just that. Forgotten that which makes his life worth living. What will set him straight? What's the cure for a good man who's just plain lost his way? Well, it's the Twilight Zone, so it probably ain't going to be psychotherapy at $200 an hour. Let's find out together, shall we? We start off in an alley at the back door of a jazz club. The door is open. We see the silhouette of a man playing the trumpet inside. Now, before we get into this, I want to talk a little bit about the scenery. Now, I've been in jazz clubs before, but I've never been round back. But I kinda doubt that they look like this. There are several overhead lights, not street lamps. These are hanging really low, probably no more than 7 or 8 feet off the ground. There are ladders here and there, plus a pretty elaborate network of scaffolding. I mean, I suppose these could all be suggestions of ongoing construction, but there's never any mention of it. After the impressionistic, near minimalist exteriors in The Four of Us Are Dying, the show's previous urban jazz outing, this set is positively busy. And that's not all. There are also a few gas lanterns sprinkled throughout. Lit lanterns. Why? There's no real reason for them to be here. They aren't providing light. I mean, they do look neat and stuff. Maybe that's reason enough. Standing amid the garbage cans, empty crates, and all that scaffolding stands a nervous man with a trumpet in his hand. This is Joey Crown. The song inside ends, and a few people spill out of the club. A man and a woman throw a little shade his way as they walk by. Do they know him? Does he owe him money? Did he do dirt to a nice young girl who would have cut off an arm for him? Wait, wrong jazz episode. Then the band leader, Baron, comes outside for a smoke. Joey approaches him.
Hi, Joey. What do you say, Baron? Listen, I brought along my baby. I thought you might need somebody with a horn.
Not tonight, Joey. The last time you played trumpet for me, you loused it up. Had to share you with a bottle.
Okay, so that's why those people were glaring at him. Apparently he's persona non grata up in this club.
A bottle? Me? I forgot what the stuff tastes like. 6, 7 months. I'm way up on the wagon.
Sure, Joey, sure.
What am I, some kind of kook? Look, Baron, I know what that stuff does to me, but I ain't an old man. Me and the horn, we got a lot of years left. I could be a #1 boy. Sure. You know, what am I going to do? Chuckle away on some bum Harry? You know? Listen, That's a pretty mellow horn, and I got some nice music in here. You know yourself, when I pick it up and I blow it, I can make them cry.
Just then, a bottle falls out of Joey's trumpet case, shattering on the ground. Baron looks at Joey sadly, knowingly, and stuffs some bills into his pocket.
For old times when you had it. A magic horn. Harry James and Max Kaminsky and Butterfield. A little bit of all of them, baby.
Harry James, Max Kaminsky, and Butterfield. I like to think of myself as a fairly well-informed jazz enthusiast, but who the hell are these guys? Research time!
Oh, Ricky, you're so fun, you blow my mind. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Ricky.
Harry Haig James was an American musician who is best known as a trumpet-playing band leader who led a big band from 1939 until his death in 1983. He was especially known among musicians for his astonishing technical proficiency as well as his superior tone, and was extremely influential on up-and-coming trumpet players from the late 1930s into the 1940s. His was the first name band to employ vocalist Frank Sinatra in 1939 for $75 a week. James signed Sinatra to a one-year contract, of which Sinatra worked 7 months before leaving to sing for Tommy Dorsey. James wanted to change Sinatra's name to Frankie Satin, but Sinatra refused. Because, Sinatra did it his way. Max Kaminsky was a jazz trumpeter and band leader of his own Max Kaminsky Orchestra. At one time, he played for the original Dixieland Jazz Band. That's J-A-S-S. Jazz. I don't know, maybe it was jazz designed to make you move your ass.
Shake your ass, show me what you're working with. Shake your ass, watch yourself. Shake your ass, show me what you're working with. I said shake your ass.
Kaminsky went on to work in television and led Jackie Gleason's personal band for several seasons. In 1975 to 76, he made recordings as a leader that well illustrated his style, which is full-toned, economical, and swinging in the manner of King Oliver, Freddie Keppard, and Louis Armstrong. Wikipedia also wants to make sure everybody knows that Kaminsky was Jewish. Not sure why that's notable unless the Jews aren't generally well known for playing jazz. Jewish listeners or jazz musicians in the know, feel free to chime in. Billy Butterfield was a band leader, jazz trumpeter, flugelhornist, and cornetist. He studied cornet with Frank Simon, but later began studying medicine. He then discontinued his studies after he found success as a trumpeter. He gained attention working with Bob Crosby, Bing's younger brother, in the late 1930s, and later performed with Artie Shaw, Les Brown, and Benny Goodman. It's interesting to note that all three of these trumpet players were white. I mean, Miles Davis was already a household name by 1960, so Serling could have name-dropped him. It's too bad. I'm a huge Miles Davis fan. Anyway, back to business.
You traded it off for some bad hooch and you got took. You got the crummy end of the stick. Why, Joey? Why?
Because I'm sad. Because I'm nothing. And because I'll live and die in a crummy one-roomer with dirty walls and cracked pipes. And I'll never even have a girl. I'll never be anybody. Because half of me is this horn. I can't even talk to people, Baron, because this horn, that's half my language. But when I'm drunk, Baron, when I'm drunk, boy, I don't see the dirty walls or the cracked pipes. I don't know the clock's going, that the hours are going by. Because then I'm Gabriel. I'm Gabriel with a golden horn. And when I put it to my lips, it comes out jewels. Comes out a symphony. Comes out the smell of fresh flowers in summer. Comes out beauty. Beauty. When I'm drunk, Baron. Only when I'm drunk.
Remind you of anyone else in the Twilight Zone who drinks to blur the harsh reality of life? I'm thinking Henry Corwin, the mall Santa from The Night of the Meek, which we just discussed 2 weeks ago. This is a recurring type on the Twilight Zone. Sad drunks who speak eloquently of the misery they face every day. Corwin and Crown are two of Serling's most compelling characters. Pathetic, yet poetic.
Just plain, ordinary nothing. Oh, man, I'm tired of hanging around.
He then plays, and it's beautiful. He has a bit of trouble with that high note, but it's still beautiful. Now the next day, he hawks his trumpet and promptly gets plastered. He sees an oncoming truck and decides to step out in front of it. He wakes up on the sidewalk. It's now night. He sees a cop nearby.
Look, officer, I assure you I'm not what you would call drunk, you see. Well, you can ask Officer Flaherty, who's usually on this beat. Well, he'll tell you I'm not the kind of a guy who runs around and...
Wait, is this the same Officer Flaherty from The Night of the Meek?
It's like Corwin says. We're dealing with the supernatural here.
The cop walks away without acknowledging him. He tries to bum a light off two different guys, but neither of them bat an eye. There's a movie theater nearby, so he tries talking to the ticket girl. She also ignores him.
Well, look, at least you can be a little courteous. I mean, look at me!
Whoa. Such a likable guy, but that was a little bit intense. Reminds me a bit of Robert De Niro in Raging Bull.
What are you doing? I just said don't overcook it. You're overcooking it. Bring it over.
You want your steak?
Bring it over. Bring it over. It's like a piece of charcoal. Bring it over here.
You want your steak?
Yeah, right now.
Now, happily, Joey doesn't start throwing furniture in a domestic violence rage. Instead, he adopts the usual Twilight Zone reaction to strange events.
Look, now listen, somebody's trying to pull a gag. Somebody's trying to shake me up. Now look, something's going on now. Somebody trying to pull...
This can't be happening. I'm losing my marbles. Someone's playing a joke on me. He then notices that he doesn't cast a reflection in a nearby mirror. And the truth dawns on him.
I'm dead. That's it. I'm just plain old deceased. Well, at last. For the first time in the very short life of Joey Crown, he was successful at something.
He returns to the jazz club where he hears some gorgeous trumpet work, but it's not coming from inside the club. He tracks it down to a tuxedoed gentleman nearby.
Don't stop it. It's coming out beautiful.
Thanks.
You said thanks.
Thanks.
You hear me?
I hear you.
You see me?
Very clearly.
The stranger offers his horn to Joey and...
Oh, shit! Wait, what?
How dare you!
Oh, my God!
Straight out of context.
This is something I've been wanting to start doing on the podcast, but never really found a clip worthy until now. The idea is you take a single line of dialogue removed from the episode, absent its usual context, and just bask in the hilarity/inappropriateness. Hey, there's a reason this podcast is marked explicit, aight? Anyway, this week's specimen is a doozy.
You want to blow this a while, Joey?
Oh, shit! Straight out of context.
So Joey wraps his hungry lips around the dude's mouthpiece and blows. Then Tuxedo Guy lays some truth on our pal Joey.
How come you know who I am? You say you're not a ghost, you're not dead.
No, I'm not dead. Neither are you, Joey. Right now, you're in a kind of a limbo, Joey. You're neither here nor there. You're in the middle, between the two. The real and the shadow.
That right there is my single favorite dialogue passage in the entire series. You may have noticed that it's mixed into the theme music of this very podcast. I first heard it in a commercial on KPDX 49 when I first discovered the show in syndication. It was just a collection of quick clips from the show. Now, at the time, I hadn't seen a passage for Trumpet, and didn't for quite a while, so it kind of drove me crazy wondering where that line, which so perfectly summed up the Twilight Zone in general, came from. I remember it also had the following line from Elegy.
This is the place where your dreams come true after you've stopped dreaming.
Which is also a pretty cool descriptor for the show. Now, whoever put that promo together back then, well, kudos, good sir, or ma'am, or however you identify.
You've got a choice, you know.
Choice?
There's still time.
Well, if I've got a choice, then I want to go back. Understand? I want to go back.
All right, you go back. But Joey, no more stepping off curbs. Take what you get and you live with it. Sometimes it's sweet frosting, nice gravy. Sometimes it's sour, it goes down hard, but you live with it, Joey. Oh, it's a nice talent you got. To make music, move people, make them want to laugh, make them want to cry, make them tap their feet, make them want to dance. That's an exceptional talent, Joey. Don't waste it.
The stranger walks away.
Hey, mister!
What is it, Joey?
I didn't get your name.
How's that?
Your name! I didn't get your name!
Call me Gabe. Short for Gabriel.
So it looks like Joey doesn't just have a guardian angel, he has the guardian angel, that bugle-blowing archangel from the Old Testament himself. Hey, just because I'm an agnostic doesn't mean I don't know my Bible. So Joey's back out on the sidewalk, out in front of the pawn shop, where his trumpet still sits in the display window. There's something else there too. His own reflection. More specifically, the reflection of his prostrate body after being kissed by that oncoming truck. And then he's back among the living, fresh from his quick trip to Limbo. The driver of the truck hands him some cash, hoping he won't report the accident. He won't, because he's cool like that. Besides, he needs the cash to get his horn out of hock. That night, Joey sits on the roof of his building, playing with the smooth confidence of someone who's been to the brink and back, and we see that he's got an audience.
You play it beautifully.
Thanks. I gave it up this morning, but I'm taking it back. The bugle and me till death do us part.
I'm new here. I've never even been in New York before. I just moved in. My name's Nan.
Hi, I'm Joey. Joey Crown.
We're pulling so hard for Joey at this point that we don't even care that that was a pretty awkward dialogue exchange. Remember what he said at the very beginning.
I'll never even have a girl.
Well, here's a girl, and she's vibing on him big time.
You know, you may like it here. It's not a bad town.
Maybe you could show me some of it.
Me? Sure, I'd love to. Well, I could show you the Battery, and I could show you Central Park. I could show you 52nd Street. And we could go in and listen to some good jazz.
Sappy? Sure. But we like Joey. We want him to have a happy ending. And he does. And it's a good thing. I mean, Sure, it's contrived as hell. He gets a new lease on life after a near-death experience and meets the love of his life later that day. It's ridiculous. But it's a story about a guardian angel, which, amazingly, unlike the other guardian angel episodes, Mr. Beavis and Cavender is coming, well, doesn't suck. If we're willing to accept that biblical archangels are real for the purpose of the story, then why couldn't Gabriel also place a lonely pretty girl in Joey's newly straight and narrow path? Silly, sure, a bit, but it still works for me, and I am a cynical sumbitch.
Amen.
Let me alone, why don't ya? I'm working here. Or hey, if you got nothing better to do, why don't you bring me a beer? Huh? Come on, bring it over here. It's hard to believe, but A Passage for Trumpet is the only time in its 5-year run that the Twilight Zone drops us into an explicitly purgatorial limbo-type environment. I mean, there's also 5 characters in search of an exit, but that's more of a cosmetic limbo. I mean, it's a completely blank place, which looks like it could be limbo, but is actually more like hell, since it doesn't appear that there's a way out. But it never really says one way or the other. The concept of limbo differs depending on which theology you're referencing, but in general terms, it's a midpoint between life and death, a way station of sorts in which the soul undergoes a final purification before it moves on to heaven. This is depicted rather viscerally in the 1990 film Jacob's Ladder, which we touched on when we covered The Hitchhiker a couple months back. The Hitchhiker, incidentally, takes place in a kind of limbo-like construct where the protagonist gradually comes to terms with her own death, which I suppose you could read as some kind of pre-afterlife, if not purification, at least preparation. But that one's pretty ambiguous about it. In Passage for Trumpet, it's overtly and unmistakably limbo. But apparently in this limbo, the spiritual purging is optional. You can bounce back out of it and go back to your life if you so choose. At least Joey gets to. I don't know, maybe not everybody gets that option. A Passage for Trumpet is written by Rod Serling and directed by Don Medford, the first of 5 episodes he'll do. He'll direct Jack Klugman again in Season 4's Death Ship, another favorite of mine. And yes, you heard me right. That's the one and only Jack Klugman as Joey Crown. You've heard me say he's my favorite actor to ever appear on The Twilight Zone, but up until now, we haven't covered any of his episodes. When I covered A Passage for Trumpet in my blog on its 50th anniversary, May 20th, 2010, wow, has it been that long already? I wrote the following. Jack Klugman, best known for his roles on TV's The Odd Couple and later Quincy M.E., had a knack, perhaps more than any other TZ actor, for capturing the elusive essence of a basically decent guy who's missed the boat in life, the down and almost out dreamer. In 3 of his 4 TZ outings, he plays variations on this same basic character. The exception, Season 4's Death Ship, finds him more focused and intense, but still brilliant. Sure, Joey Crown is to blame for his bad choices, but we still feel for the guy nonetheless, and we want things to work out for him. Klugman turns in a wistful, self-deprecating performance that absolutely shines. You can't help but root for him. If you ask me, Jack Klugman never once sucked in a role. I challenge anyone out there to prove me wrong. His career stretches clear back to the early days of live TV. In fact, he first crossed paths with Rod Serling in 1959 when he co-starred in Serling's The Velvet Alley on Playhouse 90 with Art Carney, Henry Corwin / Santa Claus himself. The Velvet Alley concerns Ernie Pandish, an up-and-coming television writer, Art Carney, and Max Salter, his friend and agent, Jack Klugman. When Ernie finally hits it big, he's blinded by fame and fortune and loses sight of the really important things, like loyalty.
Hey, those preliminaries you're talking about, they'd better be about the Golden Gloves. Unravel the flesh, will you, Max? I presume you've been told.
Wait. Unravel the flesh? Where have we heard that before?
Hey, sport, unravel the flesh.
Yes, the 4 of us are dying. Is that something people said in the late 50s, early 60s? Some kind of slang? Hey, pal, unravel the flesh. My research indicates not, so maybe it's something Serling just came up with, and liked it so much that he used it more than once. It sounds like something Pinhead would say in Hellraiser. We have such sights to show you. Pain, pleasure, we will unravel your flesh.
Let's go out in the hall, Max, huh? No, let's talk about it right here and now. Max, I've been intending to talk to you about this. I've decided to sign with the Chambers Agency.
Why? For a lot of reasons, Max. So he can get representation, so he can be managed, so he can be free to get his work.
Look, I'm going to give it to you once more, Freddie. Now, this is business between Ernie and me. I can't stop you from standing around and relishing it, but I can ask you to keep your mouth shut. Max, this is no time to talk about it. Let's go have a drink. No, I don't want to drink with you. That's not in my contract. Max, there never was a contract. It was just an agreement. To last as long as it was, well, mutually beneficial. It isn't any longer. At some time between dinner time last night and this morning, it ceased to be mutually beneficial, huh? Well, it's been headed this way for a long time. I think you know it. I think you know I never knew it. Ernie, there's one thing you're going to have to learn. You were the one person in the whole world I thought knew it already. You can't slough off people like they're a tax problem. Oh, sure, things like a desk and an office lamp, a typewriter, they become obsolete. Not people, man. Oh, you're a big man now. You can afford to delegate almost every unpleasant, inconvenient little act that you want to. Hurting friends, Ernie, this you can't delegate. This has to be a very personal project. So don't stink up the air with a lot of plaintive crud about how miserable it is to be successful. Buddy, you don't know the meaning of misery. Not till you've been sold out by the people you love. I didn't want to hurt you, Max. You didn't want to hurt. That's the comedy line of the year.
Max, I hope there'd be no hard feelings. I'd like us all to be friends.
Anybody ever tell you you're a prince of a guy?
The Velvet Alley. Boy, that was one script where he let his guilt hang out on falling into the Hollywood rat trap, the infatuation with power and success, his relationship with an old agent. And I always felt that Velvet Alley gave more insight into Rod's personality than anything he ever wrote or anything he ever told to any of his friends.
That's Rod Serling's brother, Robert, taken from the excellent American Masters documentary submitted for your approval. I thought it was out of print, but it looks like you can get it for $25 on Amazon. It's also on YouTube, but it's pretty low res. But if you've never seen it, watch it, then order the DVD, which I'm sure you will. It's really well done. Anyway, Serling's experiences going Hollywood wasn't necessarily as ugly as depicted in The Velvet Alley, but he clearly felt badly enough that he needed to exercise it through his writing, which, as we know, is how he dealt with everything that stuck in his craw and nagged at his conscience. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, The Velvet Alley is on YouTube, split up into 8 parts, or you can stream it from Amazon. Either way, it looks pretty bad. It unfortunately hasn't been preserved the way the kinescopes of other live Serling efforts like Requiem for a Heavyweight and Patterns have, but it's better than nothing.
And it was after The Velvet Alley, of course, I was doing Gypsy. And Rod called me personally, and he said, I just wrote a nice half-hour script I'd like you to do. I said, what are you talking? I'm in a play, Rod. I can't do it. He said, well, you have a vacation in January for 2 weeks. Just only take a week. Come on out and have a vacation out here. Well, anything Rod said. I said, what's it like? He said, well, it's a trumpet player. I said, okay. I'm a good way to, I asked my wife. She said, fine, we'll go out. So I then worked with a trumpet player in the orchestra, Gypsy, who taught me how to finger and did all the thing. Gave me an old battered, I bought an old battered trumpet. And it was a wonderful experience. Of course, working with Rod was always a wonderful experience. Every word was important. I mean, you didn't change words as you did in other shows when you worked for Rod or worked for Reggie Rose. So that was it. So each year, I did another one, and they were all wonderful. I didn't like the owl one, but the other 3 I liked. I liked the pool. It's my favorite. But it's just a wonderful show. It's because he's written such good work. You look at that game of pool, it's got so much to say. And then we did the one I don't like, which is the airship, which keeps going around, which we do in life all the time, without it ever ending.
Wait, he didn't like Death Ship? Jack, come on, man, you're killing me. Now, that was obviously recorded later in Klugman's life after he'd survived a bout with throat cancer. He would lose a later battle with prostate cancer and pass away on Christmas Eve, 2012.
They're the ghosts, Joey. They just don't know it, that's all. Sometimes, to make it easier, we have to work it that way. We let them go on in a life that they're familiar with. They never know for a long while.
The angel Gabriel is played by John Anderson.
Move yourself. You always live your life, never thinking of the future.
No, not that John Anderson. This John Anderson was primarily a TV actor, yet another Twilight Zone veteran who showed up on practically every TV show in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He crossed paths with Jack Klugman again on Quincy M.E. 3 different times, but never once did he play a guardian angel. What a missed opportunity. Now, like Klugman, he did a total of 4 Twilight Zones. He also had a memorable turn as the Ebonite interrogator on the Outer Limits episode Nightmare.
I wish to congratulate you gentlemen. Your decision to cooperate was intelligent and brave. Did you draw straws? That is how the men of 02 selected their traitor.
I have in my possession the Sideshow Collectibles action figure of the Ebonite interrogator, so I guess that means I have a John Anderson action figure. He also played California Charlie, the used car dealer in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. However, my earliest John Anderson memory was his work as a war-crazed general on Operation Spoilsport, which is arguably the single best episode of my favorite mid-80s TV show, The Greatest American Hero.
You don't get it, do you? I'm pushing the buttons. I'm the one who started all this. Well, just measure the square miles the Russians have put on their map since World War II. Measure the square miles since Korea. Little by little, we're getting taken over, Maxwell. Hell's bell, soldier. You gotta know the only way to stop them is to finish them off. You don't reason with a cancer cell. You excise it. Now, it's not as bad as everybody thinks.
Nan, the girl on the rooftop, is played by the adorable Mary Webster, whose career only lasted about 8 years from 1955 to 1963. Her very last role was in another Twilight Zone in Season 4, and hey, would you look at that, it's Death Ship, which stars Jack Klugman. They even have a brief scene together, and it ain't exactly pleasant.
Let's go, Mason.
Ted, why is he here?
Get out of here. I said let's go.
Keep away from here.
You're coming back with me.
Back?
Where you belong, on the ship.
No, Ted.
You're having an hallucination, Lieutenant.
No. No, it's real.
And yeah, okay, I'm gonna go on record and classify her as a TZ babe.
That chick that won't quit. It's like stacked, like beautiful.
You got me straight tripping, boo.
My goodness, so emotional over a little fried chicken.
Fried chicken. A Passage for Trumpet has an original music score by Lynn Murray with a few cues by Jeff Alexander. It's pretty short as these things go. Most original scores range from 12 to 14 minutes, but this one's only about 8 minutes long. It's mostly jazz source music and brief, jazzy, dramatic cues, plus a couple of atmospheric little stingers. Murray assigned some cute titles for the individual cues, among them T-Zone Blues, Hawkshot Blues, Mirrorsville, Limbosville, and New Yorksville. It's the only music Lynn Murray ever wrote for the Twilight Zone, but Jeff Alexander would contribute original music for The Trouble with Templeton in Season 2 and Come Wander With Me in Season 5. So, final thoughts. A Passage for Trumpet is a great episode. Yeah, it's funny. I don't have that much to say about it. Everything just works. It's a pretty simple story, Takes place in a single day, really intimate. The structure is interesting. Nothing really happens until right before the act break. Then everything happens in the second act in the space of about 10 minutes. But it never feels rushed. There's an interesting languid quality, which I guess is appropriate since we're in a limbo environment. There is one lingering thing that does bug me just a bit. Joey Crown has a drinking problem, but outside of presenting it as a character detail that affects his ability to get work playing the trumpet, the story never suggests that he actually conquers it. His brush with death was a wake-up call to focus on the positive aspects of life, and I guess to stop fucking around and become the white Miles Davis that he was meant to be, but we have no reason to think that he won't get plastered the next chance he gets and destroy his chances with Nan, the rooftop goddess. Henry Corwin didn't swear off booze either, I guess, but we assume that he won't have access to the stuff at the North Pole. At least Mr. Denton on Doomsday addressed the protagonist's alcoholism and had him conquer it, as ridiculously easy as it was. I don't know, it doesn't wreck the episode for me, but it's a bit odd that it's so important initially and then never really mentioned again. This could have been fixed with a single line in the final scene. When he meets Nan, he tells her that he gave up the trumpet that morning but changed his mind. He could have also said that he went to his first AA meeting that afternoon. Boom, loose end laced up tight. And that way, A Passage for Trumpet becomes a prequel to 1962's Days of Wine and Roses, which co-starred Klugman as an AA sponsor.
There comes a time in the life of every alcoholic when the bottle is God. Nobody matters, nothing matters but the next drink. You know that.
I know it. I can't believe that this is happening to me, that's all. 2 people, 7 years. Booze, no booze, drunk, sober. Isn't love love?
I don't know. I was drunk for 12 years. I've been sober the last 14. All I know is the drunk world is one world, the sober world is another world. Oh, Joe, listen. At the risk of sounding preachy.
Oh, okay, no, easy does it. First things first.
No, something else. Now, she may resent you intruding on her drinking, and she may resent you being sober. It separates you.
I know that.
But, Joe, on the other hand, if you're not sober, you're not worth a damn to her or anybody else, are you?
I probably wouldn't put A Passage for Trumpet in my all-time favorites list, but it's not far off. Maybe top 20, not quite top 10. Klugman is amazing, and this may not have worked as well with a different actor. It's a great showcase for him. He's playing the same basic character that he'll play later in Season 5's In Praise of Pip, in which he'll hover near death in a different kind of limbo. Maybe I should have covered that one too this week, since, well, who knows when I'll get to it, if I ever do. So it's a brand new year. Yeah, I know we're a bit late on the New Year's episode, but it's still true. It's a brand new year. The ringing in of a new year offers us a great opportunity for renewal, for change. It's like a cosmic reset button. You look forward and maybe stop looking backwards so much. It's a good time to briefly look back over what's come before and maybe resolve to do a little bit better going forward. Case in point, it's been brought to my attention that I've made some occasional errors here on the podcast. Rather than address them as I became aware of them, I've been saving them up for a special segment.
Shame. Oh, no. Shame.
You're stupid.
Shame. Wrong. It's a mistake. Dumbass.
So after a few months on the air, well, there are bound to be a few slip-ups here and there. Goofs, gaffes, inaccuracies, dumbasseries, and just plain old mistakes. When I covered Walking Distance, I mentioned that Old Man Jenkins owned the soda shop. He rhapsodizes to the counter guy about his childhood there in Homewood, even mentioning the owner of the place, Old Man Jenkins, who was notorious for sleeping in his office before he died. Yeah, it's Old Man Wilson. I have no idea where I got Jenkins. I've seen that damn thing so many times, you'd think I'd know it by heart by now. Now, the week before that, when I covered The Lonely, I made the not exactly savory observation that maybe Allenby and his lonely deep space traveling crew might have passed Alicia around before they dropped her off on Corey's asteroid. I have to wonder if maybe on the long flight to Corey's asteroid, maybe he and his crew passed Alicia around. I don't know, does she have a reset button? Maybe she'd have no memory of it. Listener Dave Jessup kindly pointed out to me that Alicia was delivered to Corey vacuum sealed.
Look, when you open up that crate, there's nothing you need to do. The item's been vacuum packed. You'll need no activator of any kind. The air will do that.
I actually played that clip in the episode, so clearly I was too busy checking out Alicia's pseudo-womanly attributes to make the connection. That is, unless Allenby kept a vacuum sealer on board his ship, which he most likely didn't, given the space and weight issues. Okay, bottom line, when Corey got his hands on that box, it had never been opened before. Literally and figuratively.
You're a pig.
Aye, dear lady, 'tis true. I am nothing if not piggish. Which leads me right into my next faux pas. When I covered the Night of the Meek a couple of weeks ago, I completely missed a very brief appearance by one of our delicious and delightful TZ babes, who we also saw in Walking Distance. The radiant Nan Peterson can be seen in one brief shot inside the bar.
Hey, look, Santa Claus, come on in.
No, go on, get lost. Get out of here.
Merry Christmas.
Santa's a lush.
She had a line and everything. She isn't listed in the credits, her name isn't present in the cast list in either the Zickery or Graham's book, or on Wikipedia, but IMDb's got her. So Nan, you gorgeous creature you, I'm sorry it's late, but here you go.
That chick that won't quit. It's like stacked, like beautiful.
You got me straight tripping, boo.
Okay, next one. My pal, David J. Scow, that's the David J. Scow, author of The Outer Limits Companion and The Outer Limits 50, ripped me a new one for mispronouncing the word lasciviously in that same episode. Wait, did I really? Let's just see. This week, we'll be lecherously and lasciviously lusting after 2 episodes featuring gynoids. Hell. See, I have this unfortunate tendency to go into autopilot mode when I'm recording if I'm not careful.
Great story. Compelling and rich. Well, that's going to do it for all of us here at Channel 4 News. You stay classy, San Diego. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter? For the last time, anything you put on that prompter, Burgundy will read.
I have some information that you can choose to use or not use. Up to you. Ron Burgundy will read anything that is put on that teleprompter. And when I say anything, I mean nah.
I can assure you, dear listener, it's not something they dreamed up for a gag in Anchorman. It's a real thing. So when the word came up in my notes, incorrectly spelled, I just rolled with it without giving it a second thought. In my defense, Microsoft Word didn't correct my misspelling, which I'm pretty sure it's supposed to do. In fact, when I look at the notes now, it has that telltale red wavy line underneath. Where were you when I needed you, red wavy underline? You're an asshole, red wavy underline. In any case, the word is lasciviously, not lavishiously. Thanks, Dave. Hey, that's 2 different Daves busting my balls. What is it with Daves? This next mistake wasn't reported to me. I discovered it myself when I listened to a recent episode of Tom Elliott's Twilight Zone podcast, in which he covered the episode Shadowplay. When I covered Shadowplay last month, I indicated that it was produced from an original Charles Beaumont teleplay and not based on an existing short story. Turns out I was 100% wrong. As Tom pointed out, Beaumont adapted the teleplay from his short story Traumare, and I probably mangled that, it's a French word, which was first published in the February 1956 issue of Infinity Science Fiction. I even made the dumbass comment that it made sense that it wasn't based on a short story because, well, let's just go to the tape. And like Perchance to Dream, this one is written by Charles Beaumont, but unlike Perchance to Dream, Beaumont didn't adapt it from an existing short story. This one's an original teleplay. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little pissed about this one. The credits in the episode don't indicate that it's based on a short story. Both Mark Scott Zickery's Twilight Zone companion and Martin Graham Jr.'s The Twilight Zone Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic are mum on the subject, merely stating that Beaumont wrote the episode. In the book The Twilight Zone, the original stories from the 80s, which collected all the pre-existing short stories that were adapted for the show, well, Traumerei is not in there. But if you look up the Shadowplay entry on Wikipedia, well, there it is. And you can find it in the recently published collection of Beaumont short stories, Perchance to Dream, which I just got for Christmas, by the way. If you listen to Tom's podcast, which you should, if you listen to this one and not his, you're certifiably crazy. You'll hear it there. He even reads most of it. God damn it. You know, it's one thing to pronounce a word wrong or miss a detail in an episode, but my goal with this podcast is to celebrate the Twilight Zone, to convey my thoughts and feelings about it, and to maybe provide interesting bits of knowledge here and there. But if the information I'm providing is wrong, even if I'm only reporting information from other sources, well, that's still on me, isn't it? And it makes me an unreliable narrator, doesn't it? Fuck. So, okay, this final one doesn't really count since it's a blooper that I corrected on the fly as I was recording, but it's still funny, so I thought I'd just throw it in. When I was covering the 16mm Shrine, I was listing off some Golden Age film music composers, and, well, when you think of film composers from the 30s and 40s, you think of Max Steiner, Miklos Rozsa, Bernard Herrmann, Eric Wolfgang Kornhol. Kornhol? I usually fix flubs like that as I go, so I don't have a whole lot in the way of bloopers. But that one, yeah, I saved it. Just for you. Happy New Year! So if you detect a faint air of finality about the show this week, well, okay. I said in the beginning that this podcast was going to be a bit of an experiment. The idea was to basically translate my blog into an audio format and see how it played. After 4 months on the air, I'm still not 100% sure it works. The download numbers have been good, but then again, I have nothing to compare them to. I really don't know where we should be at this point. But the numbers aren't really the true barometer for me. What troubles me is the lack of listener feedback I'm getting. Y'all are downloading the show, but do you like it? Or are you ditching it and my numbers represent new and different listeners each week who are also ditching it, and so on and so on? The feedback I do get comes from other podcasters and a couple of regular listeners or show participants, which I certainly appreciate. However, I can count them on 2 hands. Less than that. A hand and a half. Otherwise, nothing. I usually end the show by asking for feedback or iTunes reviews. Nothing. The reviews on iTunes have been there since the show first started. Not a single person has posted a rating or review since. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of disheartening. When I was writing the blogs for both The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits, it was the listener feedback that really kept me going. With the podcast, I find myself wondering, what's the point? Why do this at all? I know podcasters who are passionate about their craft, even if nobody's listening, and that's great. But for me, talking for an hour or more into a microphone isn't my natural state of being. I'm a writer, not a public speaker. One of my whopping 4 iTunes reviews called both me and the show awkward. And yeah, he was right. But fuck, even negative feedback is still feedback. It's better than ambivalent silence. I feel a bit like Joey Crown in Limbo. Do you hear me? Do you see me?
Hello? Hello?
It probably sounds like I'm whining. Maybe I am. It's my party and I'll whine if I want to. But yeah, it's been over 3 months since the most recent iTunes review and... Oh, hey, wait a second. There's a new one from just a few days ago. Finally, somebody... Oh. It's another negative review. Awesome. So this podcast endeavor / experiment, I committed to 13 weeks. I've actually done a bit more than that. If you heard my conversation with Reba last week, you heard me say that I was likely going to take some time off after the New Year's episode, which this is, which means this is it for now. I do enjoy doing the podcast, despite the amount of time involved, despite the minimal listener feedback, but something's got to change somewhere. Maybe I can do 13 weeks on, 13 weeks off, or maybe go to a bi-weekly schedule. I don't know at this point. I may change the format some, to what extent I have no idea. Or maybe I'll come back renewed and re-energized and do another 13 weeks of exactly the same thing. Or maybe a bit of time away will make me realize that this should just end right here. When the negative reviews outweigh the positives, maybe that's the universe telling me to throw in the towel. So bottom line right now, I don't know. It's all kind of up in the air, or I guess in limbo is more appropriate. But yeah, I'm stepping away from the mic for now. As always, thanks for listening, and kids, play nice. Hey, I'm still waiting on that beer.
You can keep right on waiting. I am not your servant.
I worked all day long and this is the thanks I get? Come on! Come on, bring it over!
You want your beer?
Yeah! Bring it over!
You really want it?
Bring it over here!
Here it comes.
I don't think he's breathing. Did you just kill Dad?
Honey? Honey?
What happened? Where am I?
Right now you're in a kind of a limbo. You're neither here nor there.
What?
You're in the middle, between the two. The real and the shadow.
Wait, you mean I'm actually...
Between light and shadow.
Whoa.